Hello, and welcome to the Channel of Stories. Dear listeners, before we start the story, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like and share in the comments where you are from. Thank you. Here we go.
Everyone warned me about Jack. They didn't say it outright, not at first. It was more of a vibe. The way professors looked up from their rosters and sighed at his name. The way girls tightened their ponytails when he passed by, like bracing for impact. The way some guys either nodded at him with too much respect or too much fear. He was a caution sign walking on two legs, painted in black ink and bad decisions. I wasn't drawn to him. Not then. Back then, I was the girl who color-coded her planner. I had deadlines mapped out 2 months in advance. I volunteered twice a week, drank the same coffee order every morning, and had a transfer application to Columbia sitting on my desk, half filled, half dreamed. And Jack? Jack didn't own a backpack. I'm not sure he owned a calendar. So when we got paired for that group project, Ethics in Communication, I nearly lost it. Professor Daniels announced the pairs with this glint in her eye, like she enjoyed throwing grenades and watching the aftermath. I got Jack. The human storm cloud. He showed up late to our first meeting. No pen. No folder. He sprawled into the chair across from me like it was his living room couch, then grinned. Not at me. Through me. Bright eyes, he said, looking at my highlighted notes. You don't play, do you? I didn't answer. Mostly because I didn't know if he was mocking me or flirting. Maybe both. Don't worry, he added, stealing a pen from my pile. I'll do my part. He never did. Not really. The first few meetings were me talking and him drawing tattoos in the margins of the handouts. I'd come prepared with sources and structure. He'd show up with sarcasm and some half-decent insight that annoyed me because it was, well, good. Too good for someone who didn't seem to care. I wanted to hate him. So why did I keep watching the door whenever I was in class, half hoping he'd show up? Why did his voice stay with me, lingering behind my eyes like smoke? He was reckless. Everything I avoided. But something about him made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I didn't want to avoid everything anymore. It started happening too often to be just chance. I'd tuck myself into the quietest corner of the library, headphones in, notes spread out, mind focused, and then, there he'd be. Jack. Strolling between shelves like he didn't have a care in the world. Always in black. Always with that same slouch in his shoulders, like he was ready to bolt or fight depending on the mood. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Maybe we just had overlapping schedules. Big campus, sure, but limited spaces. It wasn't impossible, right? But the third time it happened, I caught him glancing in my direction before pretending to browse a shelf marked pre-Socratic philosophy. He pulled out a book, flipped it open, and leaned against the shelf without reading a single word. Just stood there. Watching. I should have ignored him. But my eyes betrayed me. You stalking me? I muttered as he sauntered over. Please, he said, sliding into the chair across from me. Don't flatter yourself, bright eyes. I just like the view. He propped his boots on the opposite chair, the one I used for my backpack, and grinned at my glare. You're impossible. And you're predictable, he said, tilting his head. Same spot. Same playlist. Same weird lemon tea. It's kind of impressive. You don't know what I listen to. You played Fiona Apple last night on repeat for an hour. That stopped me cold. I hadn't told anyone about that night, when I couldn't sleep and wandered into the library just after midnight, letting music drown out my anxiety. I thought I was alone. You were here. Not stalking, he added quickly, reading my face. Just, couldn't sleep either. There was something different in his tone then. Something unguarded. It made me hesitate. So, what do you do when you're not, annoying people? He smirked. Wouldn't you like to know? And somehow, that became our thing. A slow game of not quite flirting, not quite friendship. He'd show up when I least expected it. Sometimes he'd sit and read, always the same battered copy of Slaughterhouse-Five. Other times, he'd ask questions about whatever I was studying, genuinely curious in a way that made me wonder how someone like him had ended up so jaded. One night he caught me dozing off mid-lecture video, and nudged me with a pencil. Don't drool on the textbook, genius. They charge extra for that. I threw a pen at him. He caught it, like he knew I would. It should have been infuriating. It should have thrown me off course. But instead, I found myself hoping he'd be there. That maybe, just maybe, he wasn't coincidence. The storm rolled in like it had something to prove. Thunder cracked hard enough to shake the window panes, and the wind sounded like it was tearing secrets from the trees. I had an exam the next morning, so I stayed in the dorm study hall late, ignoring the flickers of lightning and the shadows crawling across the walls. The lights flickered once. Then again. And then, total darkness. I froze, pen in mid-sentence. A few students down the hall screamed, the exaggerated kind of drama you expect during a blackout. Footsteps echoed and faded. Soon, it was just me and the sound of rain hammering against the roof. I should have packed up. Should have called it a night. But part of me, the quiet, coiled part, didn't want to leave. It felt sacred somehow, being the only one left, wrapped in the hush of candlelight and storm. The door creaked open. And there he was. Jack. His hair was wet, sticking to his forehead. His hoodie was damp, black turned charcoal with the rain. He didn't look surprised to see me, just amused. Afraid of the dark, genius? I narrowed my eyes. Afraid of guys who flirt like it's a dare. He let the door shut behind him and walked in like he belonged there, like the storm had summoned him. Touché, he said, grabbing the chair across from me. You always this fun during electrical failure, or am I just special? I shook my head, but I didn't ask him to leave. He pulled out his phone, then sighed. Dead? Of course. He tossed it onto the table and leaned back. We started talking. 3 hours passed like 15 minutes. We didn't talk about the project. Or school. Instead, we talked about childhoods and fears and the weird comfort of empty spaces. I told him I used to love thunderstorms as a kid, how I'd make blanket forts and pretend I was hiding from the apocalypse. He told me he used to stand outside during storms just to feel something. Just to remember he was still alive. I used to sneak out through the fire escape, he said, voice softer than I'd ever heard it. Wait for the rain. Let it hit me until I couldn't feel cold anymore. I didn't know what to say to that. So I didn't say anything. He looked at me then, really looked. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I was the one studying him, or if he'd been studying me all along. You're not like the others, he murmured. Because I don't fall at your feet. He shook his head. Because you see through the smoke. And you're still here. I felt my breath catch. In that moment, in that room filled with shadows and silence, something shifted. Something dangerous. I realized I wasn't afraid of Jack. I was afraid of what he made me feel. Like maybe the safest place I'd ever been, was sitting across from someone who didn't know how to be safe. Falling for Jack wasn't a single moment. It wasn't a first kiss, or a glance across a crowded room, or that stormy night when everything changed. It was slower. Sneakier. Like water wearing down rock, quietly, relentlessly. He started showing up more. Not all the time, not on a schedule, that would have been too easy. But he'd be there on mornings when my coffee order got messed up. He'd appear outside the psych building when I dropped my notebook, casually handing it back like he'd been walking by. He never said where he was going. He never asked where I was headed. We just started, orbiting each other. And when he touched me, that first real touch, his hand brushing against mine in the library, it felt like static and heat and warning signs. Like grabbing a live wire and not caring if it burned. The first time he kissed me, it was after a late night walk across the quad. It was cold, and he offered me his hoodie. I refused, pride, stubbornness, something stupid. So he rolled his eyes and slung it over my shoulders anyway. We stood near a lamppost, light flickering like a dying firefly, and I could feel his breath. He looked at me, not in that cocky, smirking way he usually did. No. This time it was different. You always this hard to crack, he asked. Maybe you're just not the right kind of hammer. He stepped closer. I didn't move. Then he kissed me. Hard. Like he was mad at himself for wanting it. Like he was daring the world to pull us apart. He kissed like someone who knew what loss tasted like. And wanted to feel something before it slipped away again. Afterward, he didn't say anything. Just rested his forehead against mine and whispered, "You make me feel like I'm not broken." That wrecked me. Because in his chaos, I felt calm. In his fire, I found warmth. And in the danger of him, I finally felt alive. We weren't dating. Not officially. Jack didn't do labels. He did moments, 2 a.m. texts, back stairway kisses, long looks during lectures we should have been paying attention to. It wasn't normal. But it was ours. I started skipping coffee runs with friends just in case he showed up. I lost track of how many nights I spent pretending to study while replaying the way he whispered my name like it was something sacred. But there were signs. The way he'd go quiet if I asked about his past. The way he tensed when I touched certain scars on his arms. The way he'd disappear for a day or two with no explanation, no apology. I told myself it was fine. That he needed space. That love didn't have to make sense, it just had to be felt. But deep down, something inside me knew I was skydiving without a parachute. And I didn't want to stop falling. The first time he disappeared, I blamed myself. He didn't say goodbye. No explanation. No text. Just, gone. It was a Wednesday. We'd stayed up late the night before, lying on the floor of his tiny off-campus apartment, talking about dreams. I told him about Colombia. He told me about a city he'd never been to but wanted to live in, somewhere cold, anonymous, unforgiving. He said he liked places that didn't care about your story. I said I liked stories that changed the ending. He kissed me hard before I left, like he was trying to write something permanent on my skin. I remember thinking, this is the moment I'll replay if he leaves. And then he did. 1 day. 2. 3. No reply. No post. Nothing. I asked around, a few people shrugged, a few rolled their eyes. Jack does that, someone said. He ghosts everyone eventually. I didn't want to believe it. But the silence got heavier. I kept telling myself not to text again. Not to care. But I still checked my phone 100 times a day. When he came back, it was like nothing happened. He walked into the study hall, hoodie pulled low, eyes hidden. Sat across from me and nodded. Hey, he said. Miss me? I didn't answer. Not right away. He looked rough. Paler. Eyes ringed with sleep deprivation. And his right hand trembled slightly when he reached for a pen. Where were you? I asked finally. He paused. Swallowed. Just needed to disappear for a bit. From me? He didn't answer that. Just looked down and said, from everything. That's when I should have walked. That's when I should have said, I need someone who stays. But instead, I reached across the table and took his hand. It was cold. Still shaking. I don't care where you go, I whispered. But don't shut me out. He looked at me like I'd offered him something he didn't think he was allowed to want. Then he squeezed my hand like he believed I could hold him together. It became a pattern. Weeks of sweetness. Nights tangled in sheets and whispered secrets. Then nothing. Then a party. That night, the one that finally broke me, I wasn't even supposed to be there. But my roommate dragged me out, said I was too pale, too tired, too haunted. We walked in and there he was. Jack. Arm draped around a girl in a red dress, drink in hand, laughing like nothing in the world could touch him. Like I didn't exist. I stood frozen in the doorway, while the music thumped and the world spun without me. He didn't see me. Or he did. And pretended not to. I left. The next morning, he showed up at my door. Same hoodie. Eyes bloodshot. Knuckles bruised. He looked broken. Almost. I'm sorry, he whispered. I don't know how to be good. But I know I want to try, for you. And for a split second, I believed him. Because that's the thing about fire, it hurts, it scars, it destroys. But it's also warm. And beautiful. And you forget how close you are to burning until it's too late. You always think you'll recognize betrayal when it comes. You think it'll crash through your life with sirens and red flags, that your gut will scream, that your heart will shield itself. But when I heard about the bet, it didn't come with any of that. It came as a whisper. An overheard conversation behind the vending machines in the student union. Two guys, laughing. One I vaguely recognized from Jack's orbit. The other was new. Loud. Careless. Did you see her face the first time he kissed her? One said. Like he just solved her life. Man, I still can't believe he pulled it off, the other laughed. Break the good girl, that was the deal, right? I didn't breathe. Couldn't. They kept talking. The kind of boys who talk when they think no one's listening. The kind who trade people like playing cards. It was supposed to be a joke, man, one added, almost defensive. He didn't even think she'd fall for it. She did, though. Hard. I walked away. Slowly. Carefully. Like I wasn't shaking. I didn't cry. Not right away. I went back to my dorm, locked the door, and stared at the ceiling. The words echoed louder than any storm Jack had brought with him. Break the good girl. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I didn't even text him. The next day, he came to find me. Eyes tired. Smile hesitant. He sat on the bench beside me like nothing was wrong. But I couldn't look at him without hearing their voices. Was I just a bet? I asked. His face drained of color. Who told you? Does it matter? He stood, pacing. It started that way, okay. But it changed. You changed it. I didn't say anything. Just watched him unravel. He looked up, desperate. I didn't mean to hurt you. That's the thing, Jack. You didn't mean not to, either. I left him there. Sitting on that bench like a boy who'd just lost his favorite game. Later, he texted. Paragraphs. Apologies. Promises. He said the bet ended the second he got to know me. That the others didn't understand, didn't see what he saw. That I was the first person whoever looked at him like he was more than the fire. But I wasn't ready to hear it. Not then. Because betrayal doesn't just break trust. It breaks the version of yourself that believed in someone. And I didn't know how to put her back together. The hardest part wasn't walking away from Jack. It was what came after. Silence is a strange kind of noise. It echoes. It repeats itself in the quiet moments, brushing your teeth, folding laundry, trying to read a paragraph for class and realizing you've been staring at the same sentence for 30 minutes. That first week, I deleted every photo. Blocked his number. Changed mine. I even moved desks in class. Just the thought of seeing him from across the room made my chest tighten. I started therapy. It felt stupid at first. Like, how could I explain what I was grieving? A boy. A guy who kissed me like I was air and disappeared like smoke. But my therapist didn't ask for proof. She didn't ask for receipts. She just listened. She said his kind of love, if you could call it that, wasn't about me. That Jack had probably spent his whole life running from himself. That people like him don't always mean to hurt others, but they do it anyway, because they are bleeding too much to care who gets cut. I told her I didn't want to be anyone's lesson. I told her I hated that part of me still missed him, missed the way he whispered my name when no one else was around, or how he'd mimize my favorite snack and show up with it like a peace offering. But mostly, I hated how I couldn't stop wondering, was any of it real? Some nights, I swore I could feel him. Like a shadow pressed against the door. Like static under my skin. But he never called. Never showed up. And slowly, I stopped waiting. I started going to the gym. Not to get stronger, I already was. But to feel the weight of something I could control. I journaled. Pages and pages. I wrote letters I never sent, poems I never showed anyone. I rebuilt the wall he burned through, brick by painstaking brick. I learned how to sit in my sadness without trying to fix it. I stopped pretending healing meant forgetting. Because I wasn't trying to erase Jack. I was trying to remember who I was before him, and to make peace with who I'd become after. And one night, months later, I saw someone wearing his hoodie. Same cut. Same color. My breath hitched before I realized it wasn't him. But I didn't cry. I just turned the corner, walked home, and went to sleep. No dreams. No fire. Just quiet. It had been a year. 12 months. 52 weeks. Hundreds of days that stacked up like bricks between who I was and who I had become. I didn't think I'd see him again. Not because I thought he vanished forever, Jack was too stubborn for that, but because I thought I wouldn't care anymore. I was wrong. It was late October. The kind of afternoon that smelled like old leaves and wood smoke, where everything felt gold-edged and nostalgic. I was walking past the park near campus, coffee in hand, scarf wrapped high. And there he was. Sitting on a bench like he'd been carved from it. Leaner. Paler. His black hoodie replaced by a grey jacket, older than he probably remembered. His hair was longer. Hands still restless. But his eyes were the same. He looked up. Our eyes met. No smile. Just a slow, quiet recognition. I froze. He didn't speak. Didn't stand. He just nodded once, barely, like maybe he'd pictured this 100 times, too. So I Saturday. The space between us held 1,000 unsaid things. He didn't ask how I was. He just looked at me with this soft kind of awe, like I'd grown a new skin. Like I wasn't someone he knew, but someone he remembered wishing he'd held on to. You look steady, he said finally. I blinked. I am. He nodded like that hurt more than it helped. I never stopped thinking about you. I didn't answer. I've been clean for 7 months, he added. No pills. No running. No disappearing. My stomach twisted. I didn't know you were using. He looked away. I didn't want you to. We sat in silence. Leaves scattered at our feet. Somewhere, a dog barked. A child laughed. He said, "You saved me." Even when I didn't deserve it. I let that hang in the air for a moment. Then I said what I'd been carrying for months: "You didn't need saving, Jack. You needed to stop pretending you didn't feel anything." He didn't flinch. He just nodded. Slowly. Like he finally understood. We didn't hug. We didn't kiss. We didn't promise anything. We just sat a day. And when I stood to leave, he didn't stop me. I turned to him one last time and said, "Take care of yourself." And he whispered, "I'm trying." For the first time, I believed him. It was the gentlest goodbye I'd ever lived through. There were no slammed doors, no shouting matches, no sobbing on bathroom floors. Just a park bench, autumn air, and the quiet understanding that sometimes love isn't meant to be held, only learned from. As I walked away, the leaves crunched beneath my boots, loud in the stillness between us. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Some goodbyes are sacred because they happen face to face. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't numb. I was still. For the first time in a long time, I felt the weight of my own body. The rhythm of my own breath. My heartbeat steady, not fast, not frantic. Just mine. I think that's what healing really feels like. Not relief. Not a grand epiphany. Just coming back to yourself. I made it 3 blocks before I had to stop. I leaned against a brick wall and stared at the sky, the same way I used to search for answers in books or in Jack's eyes. But this time, I wasn't searching. I was remembering. Remembering all the versions of me I had to outgrow to survive him. The girl who used to flinch when her phone buzzed, unsure if it was love or destruction on the other end. The girl who silenced her needs because she didn't want to be too much. The girl who mistook chaos for passion. Wounds for depth. Heat for home. I mourned her. I loved her. But I didn't miss her. Because the woman walking away from that bench. She knew her worth. She wasn't someone to be won or broken or bet on. She was someone who chose herself. I didn't tell anyone I saw him. Not at first. It felt too delicate, too personal, like a chapter that wasn't meant for an audience. But in my journal that night, I wrote, "He looked like someone who had walked through fire and finally stopped running from the smoke." And me? I finally stopped trying to put the fire out. Because sometimes, surviving the burn teaches you more than never getting scorched at all. They say the deepest scars don't show. And maybe that's true. Because no one walking past me now, no one in class, in line at the coffee shop, on the subway, would ever guess what I carry. They'd see a girl with purpose. A girl with sharp eyes and quiet confidence. A girl who learned how to stand alone without folding inward. But beneath it all, there's still a faint outline of him. Not as a wound. As a watermark. Jack was never the villain in my story. He was the wildfire I walked into thinking I could control it. And when it burned, I didn't run. I stayed. I tried to understand it. Tried to love it. Tried to save it. That was my mistake, believing love was about fixing, when really, it's about choosing. And eventually, I chose me. It wasn't easy. Healing never is. There were nights when I hated how much I still missed him. Days when I caught myself wondering what it would have been like if things had been different, if he had been different. But that's the trap, isn't it? Falling for the potential of someone, not the reality. Loving their best moments, while surviving their worst. I used to think strength meant staying. Enduring. Forgiving everything just to prove I was good. Now I know better. Strength is leaving. Quietly. Clearly. Without bitterness, but also without apology. And the most powerful kind of love. The kind where you don't beg someone to change. You let them. Or not. We saw each other once more, months later. Briefly. A passing glance in a crowded street. He didn't stop me. Just nodded. I smiled. Small. Real. That was the end. Not the explosion I'd once feared. Not the reunion part of me still fantasized about at 2 a.m. Just a moment. Clean and done. Now, I dream of other things. Of soft hands and open words. Of kitchens filled with laughter. Of someone who stays, not out of guilt or chaos, but out of joy. Someone who doesn't have to be rescued to be worth loving. Jack taught me how deeply I could feel. But I taught myself how to survive feeling that deeply. I was the safe one. He was the fire. And when you touch fire, you don't walk away the same. But you do walk away. And sometimes, that's the most beautiful ending of all.